Hi, I'm Mike Busch, founder and CEO of Savvy Aviation, and I am pleased to invite you to spend the next 30 minutes viewing this very important video intended to help you learn the right way to perform a borescope inspection of the cylinders of a piston aircraft engine in a professional and comprehensive fashion. We've created this training video primarily for A&P mechanics and other maintenance technicians who work on piston GA aircraft because few of you have received any kind of formal training in borescopy, nor is there any meaningful guidance on the subject in aircraft or engine manufacturers' maintenance manuals or service bulletins. But this video should also be of interest to maintenance-involved aircraft owners or operators who perform their own preventive maintenance, since a borescope inspection is definitely something that falls within the scope of the preventive maintenance that an aircraft owner or operator who is not a licensed mechanic is permitted to perform. And with first-rate borescopes available in the under $300 range, any interested aircraft owner can easily afford to own his own borescope. Now, for the past 15 years, we at Savvy have been emphasizing the importance of borescopy as the gold standard for assessing cylinder condition. For way too long, aircraft mechanics have been using the archaic differential compression test for this purpose. But the compression test has proven itself to be both unreliable and invalid. Unreliable because its results vary all over the place and are highly non-repeatable. Invalid because it doesn't do a good job of measuring what it is supposed to measure, that is, the airworthiness of the cylinder assembly. We've plotted compression test results for Continental and Lycoming cylinders over extensive periods of time in service and calendar time, and the results can be seen to vary all over the map, plunging at one annual, spiking back up at the next one. Now, does anyone believe that the cylinder got profoundly sick one year and then miraculously healed itself the next year? Of course not. What these unpredictable test results tell us is simply that there's more noise than signal in the compression test results. A properly performed borescope inspection is vastly more reliable and informative. As an indication of cylinder condition, the borescope effectively allows you to relocate your eyeball inside the cylinder's combustion chamber and look around to your heart's content at the cylinder walls, piston, head-to-barrel junction, cylinder head, and at the all-important valves, valve seats, and valve stems with stunning clarity and resolution. It has been 2 decades since I first became interested in borescoping piston aircraft engine cylinders. It was 2003 to be exact. Prior to that year, guidance for assessing the condition of Continental cylinders came from a 1984 service bulletin, M8415, which said that it was okay for compressions to be as low as the low 40s, as long as the air was escaping past the rings, but that no air leakage past the valves was permissible, none. This unrealistic criterion resulted in tens of thousands of Continental cylinders to be removed needlessly. Then in 2003, Continental issued its service bulletin SB03-3 that revolutionized cylinder condition determination in 2 ways. First, compressions in the low 40s were okay regardless of where the air was leaking. Rings, valves didn't matter. Second, it said that borescope inspections must be performed every time a compression test is performed, and it went on to say that if the cylinder flunked the low 40s compression test, but it looked okay under the borescope, the aircraft should be flown for at least 45 minutes and the compression test be repeated hot. In other words, Continental was saying that they trusted the borescope more than they trusted the compression test, and with good reason. I recall one savvy client whose Cirrus SR22 went in for its annual. The shop found one cylinder that measured 38/80 on the compression test, and they wanted to yank the jug. But we told the shop that we wanted them to follow SB03-3 to the letter, so they reluctantly performed borescope inspection of the cylinder, and they couldn't find anything wrong with it. We then arranged for the client to fly his airplane for an hour and bring it back to the shop where they were standing by waiting with their spark plug wrench, their air compressor, and their gauge set, and they retested the cylinder in question, and it measured 72/80 on the retest. Compression tests lie a lot. Borescopes never do. Back then, Continental was recommending a $2,000 optical borescope called the Lennox Autoscope that was state-of-the-art at the time, but seems like a caveman's club when compared to the remarkable borescopes available today for less than $300. Today's scopes can capture breathtakingly high-resolution digital images which can be archived, compared with images from prior inspections, and even sent over the internet for expert interpretations and second opinions. Also, borescopes can be combined with digital engine monitor data analysis, the technology that reveals what is actually taking place inside the combustion chamber when the aircraft is in flight on a second-by-second basis, to provide an awesomely powerful means of diagnosing engine issues. We'll return to all this cool stuff towards the end of this video. But now I'd like to turn things over to my colleague and Savvy's Borescope Guru, Dave Pasquale. Dave is an ANPIA and is Director of Maintenance of Pasquale Aviation in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And he's forgotten more about borescoping piston aircraft engines than most of us will ever learn. Dave is going to demonstrate for you how to perform a borescope inspection of a cylinder. He will be using a specific protocol involving 11 specific borescope camera shots taken in a specific sequence that we hope will evolve into an industry standard. For demonstration purposes, Dave will be using a 5th generation Vividia AbleScope model VA400, one of the under $300 scopes that's a favorite of many of us at Savvy. There are plenty of other excellent ones in that price range, however. Dave prefers to display the live images on a Windows laptop computer, although some technicians use an iPad or an Android tablet, and some scopes include a built-in display. Savvy's chief analyst, Joe Godfrey, who you'll be seeing later in this video, uses his MacBook Pro, which he connects wirelessly to his borescope via Wi-Fi. For quick look-sees, I'll even use my iPhone as an imaging device. Camera technique is everything. Good lighting and good focus are super important, and so is properly framing whatever is being imaged, exhaust valve, piston crown, whatever, so that the entire object is captured in a single image, providing good context to the analyst. Here are some examples of some really good images. And here are some examples of some ones that are not very good. I think the difference is fairly obvious. Dave will be demonstrating capturing 11 specific images in a specific sequence, and we encourage you to adopt this sequence when you do your own inspections. To assist with this, we've created a companion illustrated borescope inspection checklist that includes descriptions and examples of each of these 11 images, together with a file naming convention to facilitate easy archiving of the images, and if you're so inclined, easy bulk uploading to the Savvy Borescope Image Repository, which is available free of charge to anyone who wants to use it. Now, 11 images per cylinder might seem like a lot, and it is, but there's method to Dave's madness. The images include an image of the piston crown, 3 images of each of the intake and exhaust valves. They include the valve head, the valve seat, and the valve stem. And finally, 4 images of the cylinder barrel taken at the 3, 6, 9, and 12 o'clock positions. With a little practice, it won't take you much longer to capture these 11 images than it did for me to describe them. Now here's Borescope Guru Dave Pasquale to take you through each of the 11 pictures in the protocol, beginning with the piston crown.
The first image that I'm going to take in our cylinder inspection is going to be of the top of the piston, and the way we want to do that is we'll take the scope and use the lights on the scope to light up the inside of the cylinder, and then I'm looking down through the spark plug hole into the cylinder, and then I'll take the prop and turn it until I see the piston go all the way to the bottom. And so right there I have the piston all the way at the bottom, and I'm going to rotate the scope around and try to position it, or well, first I'll take a look at the top of the piston and look for anything that stands out. If we have any dents or dings, or if there's an oil film or something of that nature, we'd like to capture that. In the case of this piston, I don't see any issue in the top, so I'm going to get as much of the piston in as I can. I can't get it all in there, but I'll get as much in as I can and just hold the camera as steady as possible. And then take the picture. So the next picture we want to take is of the exhaust valve head. So we'll push the scope in until it reaches the piston, and then as I'm going in, I'm going to push the plunger and bend the scope around like that. Since this will be the spark plug hole, the valves are going to be up here by my hand, and that's what we're going to want to see. We don't want to run the scope into the top of the piston, or you'll collect a bunch of dirt on the end of the scope. So I'll put the scope in, and then I'll bend the camera around and just gently push it against the top of the piston. And then the scope too, if you look, it bends in the direction of the cord. So as I push the plunger, it's bending in this way. It's in the same plane as the cord. So that's how you know which direction it's pointing. So I'll bring it in till it hits the top of the piston and push the plunger down. And then I'll position the scope so that I get the whole valve in the image. Now you can see if you rotate the handle of the scope around, you see I'm moving the handle around. It changes the way the valve looks, and it changes the way the light reflects off the top of the valve. Ideally, you'd like to have the camera centered over top of the valve. That's going to make the reflection of the lights even all the way around. If the camera is offset, it's going to make the reflection all on one side, and it can give the appearance of an uneven heat signature when there isn't one. I find that's more common in valves that have black colored deposits on them than ones like this one here, which are more rust color. But you can see it a little bit on this valve too, and we'd like to highlight the deposits as much as possible and give an accurate depiction. So I'll center the valve inside the image, and once I have the whole valve in the image, it's centered, and I have the scope positioned correctly, I'll take the picture. Now to do the intake valve is our next picture. All you have to do is you rotate the handle. You see I'm twisting the handle here. You just twist the handle until the intake valve comes into view, and then you'll have to make some minor adjustments to the position of the scope. And the intake valve is larger, so it barely fits in, and it may clip the top and the bottom. You get in as much as you can and have it centered in the image, and then take the picture. The next picture we're going to take is of the exhaust valve seat. And so we need the exhaust valve to be open. And what I'm going to do there is I'll position the scope so that it's just inside the spark plug hole, and then I'll bend the scope around the edge of the hole, just like it is around my finger right there. That's what we're going to want to do inside the cylinder, so that we can see down along the inside of the cylinder head at the edge of the valve. So I'm going to put the scope in here, and we'll take a look and see if the valve is open. If it's not open, we'll have to rotate the cylinder or the crankshaft and see. Or see, now there the intake valve is open. That's the intake valve on the left, and this is the exhaust valve here on the right. We want the exhaust valve open because we want to take all the pictures in the same order. So if the intake valve is open, in order to get the exhaust open, we need to rotate the engine backwards one revolution. So here it comes around backwards, and we want the piston about mid-stroke. So I got the piston mid-stroke, and then I'm positioning my scope just inside the spark plug hole and bending the tip of the scope around to look at the edge of the valve. And there we see the exhaust valve is open. And I typically take an image of the right side, or the side that's on the right of the valve. So I'll have the edge of the valve positioned down here at the bottom right corner of the image. The valve seat will be positioned at the top right corner, and then the stem is going to be over here on the left side. And you'll find that if you pull the scope around toward the cord, you can fit more of the valve in the image. So here you see I'm closer to the valve, and then by doing this I pull it further away from the valve, and we'd like to fit it, as much of it in as possible. So I'll get it positioned here, and then try to hold still. And then take the image. You could also do the same image from the opposite side of the valve. So if you're doing that, you're going to hold it so that the edge of the valve is down here in the bottom left corner, the valve seat's in the upper left corner, and then the guide, or the stem, is in the upper right corner. So I'll bend it around here, and then we'll take that picture. Now we want to take a picture of the valve stem and the valve guide. And the way we're going to do that is just like we were before. We're going to push the scope in through the spark plug hole, and then we want to try to follow the image, or follow the sensor down into the opening between the valve and the guide. So it's going to come around through the spark plug hole, go through the opening in the guide, and then bend it around toward the stem. We'd like to have the valve all the way open for that. So if you put the scope in there and position it, and then just rock the crankshaft a little bit, we can see there it's fully open. And so I'll bring it around here, and we'll point it down toward the stem and the guide. And sometimes it's hard to get it all the way in there. But here here's the stem, and the guide is up in the upper right hand corner. Just get it in the image wherever you can, and I took the picture. So you have the stem coming this way up to the valve guide, and you want as much of that in the picture as you can. You have to be careful. If you get too much of the seat in there, you can see now the image down inside down inside where the stem and the seat has gone dark, and all the light is being reflected back from the seat. And then if you push it in so you can see down inside the stem there, now you notice that the camera has adjusted and we can see the valve stem and the valve guide. Sometimes you have to play around with that in order to get the image that you want. Once you've taken that picture, the next picture we want to take is of the intake valve seat. And so just like we did before, we're going to pull the crankshaft through, and we want to send basically one revolution from where we're at in a normal direction. So we have the piston halfway down in its stroke, moving from the top down. It's moving away from us halfway down, and that's going to have the intake valve open about all the way. So we'll bend the scope around and point it over here toward the intake valve, and there you can see the intake valve is open. So I'll position the intake valve here just like we did the exhaust valve. We have the edge of the valve down in the bottom right corner, the valve seat in the upper right corner, and the stem over here in the upper left corner. Once we have that position, we're going to take the picture. So there, I took a picture of it. You could also do the same thing if you feel like it, or if there's some anomaly in the valve seat, you could move it to the other side and just do the reverse of what we just did. So we have the edge of the valve in the lower left, the valve seat in the upper left, and the valve stem in the upper right. I'll take that picture. And then now we're going to do just like we did with the exhaust valve. I have the cord pointing toward the intake. That's so the scope is bending around toward the intake. And then we're going to push the scope into the cylinder as we bend it around toward the seat, or toward the guide and the valve stem. So here we have the valve stem coming up toward the top of the image, and the valve seat or the valve guide at the top of the image. So I'll take that picture. And I should also point out that the way I hold the scope is I use my fingers on the stem of the scope, and then I push the plunger in with basically the palm of my hand, like up in here. It's just on the inside of my fingers, and that'll make it easier for you to hold the scope steady and to adjust the tip of the scope as needed. Our next image is going to be of the cylinder wall. And the way we want to take that is we'll bring the piston down to the bottom of the stroke. So the piston here is at the bottom of the stroke, and we're going to push the scope in and bend the edge, or bend the tip of the scope around until we can see the cylinder wall. It's about perpendicular to the shaft of the scope right now. And what you'll see when you're looking, if you're looking at the cylinder wall and the camera is perpendicular to the cylinder wall, you're going to see a reflection from the lights running across. And it's going to vary depending on the surface of the cylinder wall. If it's a high time cylinder and there's not a lot of home pattern and there's not a lot of pitting, you're going to have a lot of reflection coming back toward the camera. And that's not really going to show you what you want to see. In the case of this cylinder, it's not really the worst thing to have that reflection there, because it's highlighting some of the corrosion pitting that's in this cylinder. If you push the scope in, sometimes it helps to push the scope in toward the piston and angle it back toward the cylinder head. That pushes the glare off of the cylinder wall, and then highlights some of the texture from the home pattern and other features inside the cylinder. In the cylinder, we're going to want to take a look at basically the 9 o'clock, the 3 o'clock, the 12, and the 6 o'clock positions. If you're looking at the cylinder this way, 12 here, 6 here, 3 over here, and 9 over there, you're going to want to take, look around the cylinder for score marks from piston pin plugs, or from scuffing from the piston, or other things like the hone pattern. We want to see how much hone pattern is in it versus how much pitting is in it. We try to get a feel for all that kind of stuff, and then capture images that are representative of what we see. So here I'll take a picture inside here. I just took a picture there, and then I'll rotate it around to the other side, and you can see if you get too close to the cylinder wall, the image becomes blurry. So it helps to position the scope. You can move it side to side. If you're moving it away from, or moving it toward the cord, is going to pull the camera away from the cylinder wall. So I just pulled it away from the cylinder wall a little bit, and then again we're playing around with the angle to try to highlight what we're looking at, looking for the texture on the inside of the cylinder. And you can see right in here, this cylinder has a real nice developed hone pattern on it in this area, so I'll take a picture of that.
I'm Joe Godfrey, and I'm the Director of Analysis at Savvy Aviation. I train and manage the team of analysts that review engine data, and now that includes reviewing Borescope images. This video is already pretty long, but we wanted to include a bit about interpreting the images that Dave just taught you how to shoot. Here's an example of a healthy exhaust valve. It has reddish exhaust deposits in the middle of the valve head and fewer deposits as you get to the edge of the valve. That's because the valve runs coolest in the center and hottest at the edges. So this valve head is like a temperature map, and it's telling us that the valve is sealing well. It's running at equal temperature all the way around. Here's a valve that's in trouble because along with the red deposits on the left side of the valve, there are green and gray spots on the right edge. As this valve wears in service, that right edge will develop more of a green tinge, like this valve, or this one. Seeing these asymmetrical heat patterns on exhaust valves helps owners and mechanics catch valve problems early so we can see less of this. When the Borescope team at Savvy Analysis looks at a set of pictures, we're looking for trouble, meaning that for each of the 11 pictures you just learned how to take, we have a rubric for evaluating the areas that need attention, or at least further inspection. There are good resources available on how to interpret Borescope images. If you're not comfortable making those evaluations on your own, Savvy Analysis now includes Borescope image evaluation and interpretation. The advantage of having engine data and Borescope images is that sometimes we find the data and the images will corroborate one another. Next, we'll show you how to upload pictures to your account. When we began Savvy Analysis 10 years ago, we created a set of tools so the analysis team could create a work product to deliver to our clients. And we also decided to make those tools available in front of the paywall if an owner or mechanic were comfortable doing the analysis on their own. We're following that model with our Borescope initiative. We've created a web app where you can upload and store Borescope pictures for your engine. You know how when you go to the dentist, they take a fresh set of images, and they always take them in the same order so it's easy to compare the new images to the previous images? That's the model we used for our Borescope initiative. You begin by logging into your Savvy dashboard. Then make sure that the aircraft that's showing is the one you want to upload pictures for. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the Upload menu, and you want to choose Borescope Images. You'll see a quick reminder of the instructions here on the right because you're probably not going to be uploading Borescope images as frequently as you upload your engine data. Any image sets you've already uploaded will be listed under All Sets. For this new upload, we want to choose Create New Set. And then we want to give this set a unique name, for example, 2024 Annual. Once you're comfortable uploading image sets, you can probably use this page, but to help get started, we built this handy Guide Me. This gives you a drag and drop box for each of your 11 images for each cylinder, and you can roll your mouse over Sample Image for a reminder of what this image is supposed to show. You have a button to skip any image that you don't have. When you're done uploading the images, you can open an analysis request ticket with this button. Now, let me back up to the previous page and show you two other ways to tag your images. If you have your pictures grouped by cylinder, then you can batch upload that cylinder's images using the Upload button on the right. And if you're comfortable with file names, this question mark explains how to format your file names so that each image gets tagged into the right slot during the upload. And now let's go back to Mike to wrap things up.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you for devoting your last half hour to this training course. I hope you found it helpful and that it will improve your ability to perform Borescope inspections of cylinders comprehensively and professionally. Now, I can't stress enough that a good Borescope inspection is a vastly more reliable way to assess cylinder condition than the traditional compression test, which is an archaic methodology that has proven itself over the years to be unreliable and invalid. The Borescope is a truly awesome diagnostic tool. It not only tells you unerringly whether a cylinder is healthy or sick, but if it's sick, the Borescope can reveal exactly what's wrong, how serious it is, and whether the cylinder can be restored to health without incurring the cost and risk of cylinder removal. Remediation of cylinder problems without removal is usually possible if the problem is caught early, by using modern, minimally invasive techniques such as lapping the exhaust valve in place or performing a solvent ring flush. Now, if the cylinder is seriously ill, perhaps it has a broken ring or detonation damage, the borescope will tell you that too. And then obviously the cylinder will have to come off. But we always want to avoid cylinder removal unless there's no alternative, and the borescope makes that possible. Now, Dave has demonstrated the standard 11 image protocol we recommend. By following this protocol, you can ensure that your inspection has all the bases covered, and doing so also permits apples-to-apples comparisons of your borescope images with ones from prior inspections. And that's why we encourage you to upload your images to Savvy's free online borescope image repository, where they will be easy to review and remain permanently archived. Of course, if you think you could benefit from an expert second opinion, you can have your uploaded images analyzed and interpreted by Savvy's team of highly experienced analysts who work with these images every day. Please don't forget to download Savvy's companion illustrated borescope inspection checklist from the resources section of the Savvy Aviation website. That's also where you can find information about lapping exhaust valves in place and performing the solvent ring flush procedure. Whether you're a professional AMT or a maintenance-involved owner, I hope you found this training useful. On behalf of the entire Savvy team, I wish you happy scoping.